We talk about medicine all the time, but how often do we talk about what actually makes it work? What exactly are active pharmaceutical ingredients? And why should anyone outside the lab care? Could the quality of an API change how effective your treatment is? And why are so many countries, especially in Africa, importing them instead of producing their own? And what does that mean for safety, access, and control? In this episode of Untangle, we're raising the tough questions about active pharmaceutical ingredients, the hidden drivers of health, and the unseen facts behind every tablet and injection. Welcome to Untangle. I am Amadine Ubewe. All right, welcome back. Joining us now, virtually or remotely from Canada, is Dr. Samuel Adamatie. He's a member, or MPSN, that is a member of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. And he's a pharmacist, medical science liaison, and entrepreneur. Hello, Farm. How are you doing today?
Hi, Barry. Long time. How you doing?
It's been a while. Thanks for joining us from so far away.
Yeah, yeah,
All right,
yeah. That's good.
All right, so let's get straight into it. Some persons might not be even aware that such a thing as active pharmaceutical ingredients is even a thing. So let's start with what it is in the first place and why it's important.
Okay. Thank you once again for having me. It's been a long while, like I mentioned earlier. So, active pharmaceutical ingredients generally refers to those chemicals, that chemicals or biological components in a drug. So that thing that actually gives the effect in a drug. So whether you take an antihypertensive now that helps to bring down your blood pressure, that thing inside that actually controls the blood pressure, or you take an antibiotic that works against bacteria that causes infection, whether it's respiratory, urinary, any kind of infection, that one inside that drug that does the work, that kills the bacteria, is actually the active pharmaceutical ingredient. It's not the same as the drug itself, because the drug contains both the active pharmaceutical ingredient and other excipients. What I mean by other things they add so that can easily get to your body or get to the site of action. So in a nutshell, the active pharmaceutical ingredient is the main thing, that's the real thing that causes the effect of what a drug is supposed to do in your body. It can be biological. What I mean is biological. For example, insulin, it can be gotten from living things in the lab where you combine elements together to form. But at the end of the day, it gives you a response in the body. So, for example, paracetamol, that's chemical, acetaminophen. Insulin, that's biological, other living component. That's just basically it.
All right, fair enough. I think anyone watching already has a basic idea now. So I guess the next thing would be,
Yeah.
you've already talked about biological and others. Is there any other way they are made?
Yes.
And because what we want to drive or what we want to get to in the conversation is why some regions seem to have access or have more of it and others
Okay.
depend on them.
Okay.
So how is it even made or derived in the first place?
Well, there are precursors. There are different grades to active pharmaceutical ingredients, meaning you have precursors. Precursors are different things you combine together to give the API, which is, I will just be, so that I won't be mentioning that long. API means the active pharmaceutical ingredient.
Yeah.
Then you have the active pharmaceutical ingredients again. Then you now have the formulations whereby you combine excipients, like I mentioned, other things that you add to it to make it get to its point of action. Those materials or those components require a high level technology, and which only the developed countries, Western countries, can actually have, or they have rather. And so we're talking about very, very sophisticated or digital medical equipment manufactured by these countries. One, you talk about even the environmental factors, good electricity that is available, that there will be continuous production. Then also labor, good and experienced workers. So these four or three components I mentioned earlier, or mentioned now rather, comes together and gives you what it entails to get an API. So a developing country or other underdeveloped countries are unable to meet this demand because of the fact that those things I mentioned, they are not, proper infrastructure is not there, they don't have skilled labor for it, and also capacity is not even there. So that's why you find that in terms of APIs, you have some regions that have, some that do not. So if you want to look at it, China and Indian are actually the hub of APIs, but not the total. While the Western country and developing or developed country rather are the hub when it comes to the precursors and also the APIs itself. Why China and India are there because they have their labor is kind of low labor, so they have enough individuals they could use to make these products that could be affordable by other countries. Right, the Western countries, the US and the like, still make it too, but it's quite really expensive. But the precursor come from those regions, so you see why it's quite difficult for it to get down, and every other country can just get an API or make it.
All right. That being said, going when you, as you've broken down what goes into getting API is not
Yes,
something that's a straightforward, or sorry, an easy process. What about the quality?
not
What
at
are
all.
the ways that quality is ensured? Because from what you've explained now, if an API is doing the major work in a medicine or a drug, if it's gotten wrong, it means, I mean, is the drug still worth anything? So, what are the avenues to ensuring quality?
You asked a very fantastic question. I remember I did a presentation on our society, Community Association of Pharmacists, in the Abuja chapter on research is made for when, I think during the issue of malaria, I think how you go to compare anti-malaria drugs together. I had to let them realize that our country, Nigeria, I want to just streamline it down so it's easier for us to understand it better. We do not manufacture APIs. What we do at the highest level is we do formulations, meaning we import these APIs. Then we have, like, I think Amazon and some other industries in our country can do combinations to get the syrup, the tablet, but the APIs itself we don't. So we leave that for the big countries like I mentioned, Indian and China, because we can't get from European countries. Because if we get from European countries like the US or other European countries, we cannot afford it. That is the truth. So we now go back to India and China because they have cheap labor, because they have the population. That's why I wonder, Nigeria have population, but we cannot take advantage of it. This is where it comes in. They have cheap labor. So now when you are leaving your APIs in the hands of other international countries to give you, it's whatever you see, you get. So, and some of these countries, I don't want to mention names that I know I'm aware of, they regulate what happens within themselves. What I mean is, whatever drug their citizens take, they regulate it. But some, they don't regulate what goes out. So what it means is that it's left for the country, like Nigeria, for example, that's the work of NAFDAC to say, okay, wherever you are getting your products from in these countries, make sure you get from this particular manufacturer in this country. Do not get from everybody. That is why it is necessary that when you take a drug, it must be NAFDAC registered with the assumption that NAFDAC has done its due diligence. So this is what I'm saying. So because APIs are from these international or these countries, whatever they give you, you get. So if you now go and import your APIs from a manufacturer in that country that is not well regulated, maybe under the basement, that's where they make their API, not well regulated, or they just cut corners, you can get something that is substandard. So, for example, you want an API for a drug, say amoxicillin. You want that the actual amoxicillin should be 500 milligram. This particular manufacturer in the country that you're asking for can give you 250 milligram, and you haven't agreed to it because he wants to make excess profit and it's not regulated by his country. He will send it to you. You will market and pack it as 500, and you give to individuals in Nigeria. Will it work? It's not going to work now. It's not, because that's the problem with APIs, because you are depending on that country to give you. So whatever you are going to import it from, if you do not well, if this manufacturer are not well regulated by those countries, it's whatever you see you will take. Then our some of our manufacturers here are not even helping matters because they want to make excess profit they can tend to say, okay, don't make it like this. I've experienced one. This is me as a medical science liaison. I've seen things and all where particular drug we wanted to get it from a pharmacy, and it was this is oh, you know, they tell you this drug is the same thing as this drug, and say, okay,
Yes.
for example, I'll give you an example. This is amoxil. Say this is Samuel's amoxil, Sam amoxil, and the other one is Ogbere's amoxil, and they wrote for 500 milligram. And you say, Ogbere's amoxil was 15 naira, but Samuel's amoxil is 250 naira. And you're saying, why is Ogbere's so cheap? I didn't know it's amoxil, but you don't know what's inside. We did an investigation like that, and we found out that the one that was 15 naira in quote, it's not all like that, had amoxil just 150 milligram instead of 500 milligram, but it was really 500 milligram. While the one that was 250 naira had the actual amoxil of 500 milligram, but it was the same that was written. They will tell you this is what is inside, but it's not what is inside because you are depending on other countries for your API. And like I mentioned, some of these countries don't regulate it themselves. They don't regulate what leaves them, but they regulate what their people get. They can tell their manufacturers, make as much profit as you want to make. So whatever they are sending to you, you collect it and you just add other things in, and it's not working. So it's a lot of issue when you depend on other countries to get your API, and that's just the way it is. I have to just stop there. There are lots about it.
All right, all right. I think you've raised a number of issues here. So let me put two questions in one. On the first hand, how do you alleviate the fears of potential consumers? You know, if when these things are happening, is it up to NAFDAC being able to spot them? Are there other means that can be used? The people here who are then, there's a word you use for not producing the API, when you are combining it with other excipients, as you said. Those,
Yes, yes.
yes, those manufacturers, what is their own level of quality assurance so that people can know that at the very least, if they pass through these different stages, whatever gets to them is safe enough. And then on the other side, is there any, or what needs to happen to get the capacity to be able to make these things here? Because you've mentioned that China and India and co have huge manpower. Is there more that we need? And realistically speaking, how could we get there?
Okay, let me start with the first question. Each time I come to your studio, then when I was in Nigeria, I always hammer, or let me use that. Let me not use that statement now. I always stress on the word before you get your medicine. Make sure you ask your pharmacist. And I know the reason I always say that is that we know the way things are in our country. NAFDAC, they are trying their best, but they can be handicapped. There's little they can do in as much as they want to try. You can even see what's happening in the Onitsha issue and a lot of fights against them, collecting 700,000 to open or not. You don't know who is who and all. So everything fall boils down back to the pharmacist, who is the last man between the health provider and the consumer. So they are able to differentiate. Oh, this manufacturer. Like me, if you call me and say, Sam, I want to get this item or get the product, I say, okay, go and get it. Generic ones, they are good. Look for an unbranded one, it's cheap. But what's the company you're getting it from? Let me know. When you tell me, I make my little research and say, okay, no, don't get from this company, get from this company. Because I'm not sure where these guys are coming from. And they're like, so it all boils down to the fact that we need to help ourselves. Before you get your medication, always confine in a pharmacist when getting generic, not branded, because generic is what you can easily afford. Branded are very, very expensive. China and India have made
Maybe you can help us with the differentiation. When you say generic and branded, what do you
okay,
mean?
okay. Yeah. Generic means from the word general, you are generating from a reference. So you have a branded mean I'm the first to manufacture this product. This is my name on it. I'm giving the patency for a period of time, depending on the region. After that,
For
I
others to
send
create.
that active ingredient. Yes, so that's why generating, others to now create it. While you are giving these active ingredients to others to create, if these others are nowhere regulated, you cannot begin to have substandard because they want to make excess profit. That is human nature. It is not peculiar to Nigeria. It's all over the world. People want to make excess money. And so the ones that are well regulated, when they know that whatever they are making must pass through government scrutiny, you need to know those companies. And it's only the pharmacists that can be able to tell you that. That's why I tell people, always ask your pharmacist before getting products. Especially when you know that you are not producing this product, you are leaving it in the hands of other individuals to make it for you, right? So that's for that part. So that's the way to help for that. With NAFDAC actually doing their own work and improving, trying to make sure that countries that are manufacturing or distributing in Nigeria are well regulated to see that whatever is inside that they claim is what is inside, so that you will not get substandard product, you will not get fake product, you will not get product that are not effective. That's for
All
that
right.
first question. I
All
don't
right.
know if you can repeat the second one.
Farm. Yes, farm. We'll just hold that thought, and maybe when we return, we'll go on a break now. When we return, I will put the question back, and we can continue from there. All right.
Okay, 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 fine.
All right. So we'll take a quick break now. When we return, we'll delve further into active pharmaceutical ingredients. Don't go anywhere.
Culture connects us beyond borders. It's a bridge between traditions, creativity, and the future.
Culture is alive, shaping identities and communities every day.
Art tells stories of resilience and vision.
Artists blend tradition with innovation.
Cultural preservation creates sustainability and empowerment.
Culture evolves and adapts.
Music and dance unites communities through movement.
And right here, in the heart of our cities, artists and creators are keeping these cultures alive.
On Culture Cove, let's explore,
Celebrate and preserve the arts and culture that define us.
Welcome back. This is still Untangle. I've been speaking with Pharmacist Samuel Adamatie about the issue of active pharmaceutical ingredients. All right, let's go to the other question I had asked, which is about how do we get there? And when I say we, I'm referring now to third world countries, Africa also as a continent. What is needed to move from where the continent currently is to a place where we can cut it? Because from what you've raised now, the dependence on imports of APIs has some disadvantages. So is there a pathway to eliminating those disadvantages by homegrown manufacturing?
Need to wake up after the COVID pandemic. You know, when COVID happened, we realized that the world is not what it is. That those that we thought we were doing us good, we are not really doing us good per se. I want to just end it there. Every human being, when this issue comes to shore, your family is first. So there were drug shortages in Africa during COVID because most countries started keeping those APIs for themselves. You need to feed your house first before you go outside, right? And so it made Africans started opening up their eyes and say, hey, if anything happens, the world, the US, the Canada, every other developed country will feed their house first, make us enough before sending to any other country. And that happened to API. We had drug shortages then. Even in Nigeria was affected too. And so that made us to stand up. I think one of the things we have, like China and India, like I mentioned, which are hubs, India is the pharmacy world, is population. So when it comes to labor, there's cheap labor. So it's an advantage for us. What they did further was to make sure they have capacity, they're having proper infrastructure. So they don't have these precursors which come from the developed countries. But when the developed countries are able to give these precursors to them, they have machineries in place, skilled workers, good industry, good environment, economics of scale to manufacture this API. Come down to Africa. We have the labor. We have the good economics of scale in terms of energy and the likes, right? So now, what we see, I think in 2021 or 2022, I don't know if I'm mistaken, NIPRID in collaboration was it with WHO? I'm trying to remember now. Gave NIPRID, it was about the $400,000 grant that was given to help. This was a result of what happened in COVID, so that they can see how they can begin to manufacture vaccine. That's just peanut. That money was not to start; it was just to look for stakeholders others, and they will come together, collaborate, and see how this can be started. South Africa now has gone into that through a company called the South African Aspen or so, trying to see how they can manufacture vaccines. Egypt is one of the countries, Morocco, Tunisia, those are all African countries trying to. And what have they done? They see how they can collaborate with WHO or the EMA, talk about the European Medicine Agency, or the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration Agency, sorry, Food and Drug Agency, investing in Africa to see how we can have an API manufacturing thing. So, in as much as Africa is not there yet, I'm sure they are making effort. I just told you about the Nairobi thing. I told you about Egypt and South Africa, seeing how they can collaborate, public private partnership with some of these huge companies, WHO, EMA, FDA, to see how we can have API manufacturing companies in Africa, especially when it comes to vaccines and when it comes to some essential drugs, so that if issues like COVID or that pandemic happens, we will not be stranded and will not be left to our fate. So Africa is trying, but I know that what I know Africa has is that labor, cheap labor. We have population, but the economy does not. Meanwhile, what other things Africa is doing, including our countries, that even the ones that are importing, not to make sure that it's still unaffordable. I know sometimes they might want to do some subsidies, some of all these pharmaceuticals. I'm sure Nigeria did that, reduction in the tariffs they pay, but that's just not the major thing in itself, because if you don't have the industry here, it's whatever you see you get. And you've heard about, let me just even dive, you heard about the Trump tariff. Why we should really be bothered about the Trump tariff? Because whatever tariff the US places on any precursor that goes to these countries, such as India and China, they will also add it to theirs and send it when it's coming to Africa or other underdeveloped countries. So by extension, if tariff affect precursors, tariff will also affect the end product, and there will be price increase. Only because you're not producing your own. So you see it's moving, too many middlemen. So you see why it is necessary that Africa not only just disregard, begin to put much effort in trying to see how they can make their own API manufacturing and have their own API manufacturing firm. That's for that.
Yeah, you make a very valid point there. I think what we'd like to break down now is some of the possible concerns with having progress or success in this aspect in the continent. So let's talk about some specific issues that could arise and how you feel this affects it. For one, we have issue of storage. I'm wondering, how do you think that, what the impact of perhaps storage or handling can have on the effectiveness of API? Now, in this regard, it could be imported or it could be made here, whatever the case. Our storage facilities, I was speaking to a doctor just the other day about issue of vaccines for hepatitis and all of that. And he mentioned that, these are usually things that require refrigeration or cold temperature. Different kinds of vaccines have different kinds of, storage procedures, so to speak. So for drugs as well, for APIs, what is the concern here? What's the impact for storage?
Serious concern that you've raised. I didn't know you go through this part. If you ask me, we have very few, maybe one or two companies that are even there. For example, let me give you an instance. There's live vaccines. Say your MMR varicella vaccine, the one for chickenpox or zoster. Those are for shingles for adults, chickenpox for kids vaccines. You can store them for minus 15, minus 50 degrees. That is minus. That would be more than far lower than freezing point. Imagine having to constantly have light or electricity at that level for a period of time until you start to use that vaccine. That's one. You also remember that I said we import this item. So importing coming into Nigeria, for example, say from the United States or from India, there's a vaccine. You get to the airport. You don't just get to the airport and cross the airport, right? You're going to pass through documentation. You're going to pass through some scrutiny, airport authorities, custom, and the like. Just for it. So just imagine something happens which is not your fault, human factor. You misplaced one document. Your product cannot pass, and you know that product requires cold, freezing temperature to survive. Because some guy doesn't want to hear it, but doesn't understand medical terms. He's only doing his job. Your product will be left there. And so, who says that he's not going to the freezing temperature will not the temperature that you finally take your product out will not go above that freezing temperature that's required for that vaccine to be effective. So what you have is that you take your product out, you don't want to lose your money. You try to bend corners, and so what you can do and take it to hospitals. But at the end of the day, you get products that are no longer effective again. The batch has been affected. That product is supposed to be a recall, but because there are no proper avenues for recall, it goes to the market. People think they're actually vaccinating their kids, but they think they're actually immunizing their kids. They don't know that they are vaccinating. Because the difference between vaccination and immunization, vaccination is the giving of the product. Immunization is your body responding to it. So I can vaccinate you and you will not be immunized. So immunization means I'm giving you the item, but it doesn't mean that the item is effective for your body to respond to it. So that's the point. So you can see that affects a lot. So in terms of storage, we are not, as long as we still collect products from other countries and import, a lot of bureaucracies, logistic issues and all can affect the storage condition. That's one aspect of vaccines. Talk about the other aspect of even non-vaccine, other API powders or the likes. You're importing it from another country. Maybe it needs to go through UK to another country before it comes to Nigeria. And when it gets from the UK or from the US to the UK, in the UK, maybe something happens, freight issues, shipment issues, that product it remains in the port for 6 or 7 months. It loses its potency. After that, it comes back to your country. You still market it as 500 milligram of amoxicillin, whereas it is now about 300 milligram of amoxicillin because it has stayed in the airport or stayed in the ship house or port for more than 6 or 7 months because it needs to be cleared. So you see that storage is a big issue. And as long as you don't make it yourself, it's going to be very, very little that you can do to actually help it out. I know they are trying, but one of the ways to cover these things is just to see how some of these bureaucracies can be taken care of and can be shared. That's where you have cooperation between countries and countries working together. So you see where it comes in.
Yeah, indeed. They really do help in a manner of speaking. So is there anything you would like the average person to know about APIs in the medicine that they take? And I mean this now in terms of taking it down to the consumer themselves. You are swallowing a tablet, you're taking an injection, some of medicine or the other. What should an average person know? Because as a professional, you know all about the back end, what's happening in the lab and all of that. But for us here who are just interested in, I want to take this medicine and I want to be healed, or I want to, be treated. Yes. What are there some things I should know? Perhaps even when it comes to mixing and matching, for instance, we hear things like, if you have malaria, if you are taking this drug, don't take this, all of that. What are some common things that we ought to know?
Well, that's a different topic entirely. You're talking about drug interactions and movement. You should not combine with water, no. And that is only your pharmacist that can do that. I'll tell you, that's a big topic entirely. There are a lot of practices that we engage in that are not really helpful. There are drugs that we know elderly cannot take, and we just combine it and also that because we just go to nearby chemist and buy. We don't know that this drug in the future might cause this, and that. So that's different. That's a different thing entirely. When we come to that, we can talk about drug interactions or how to take your medications that we get. But in this aspect, what the individual, the consumer should know is this. Priority one is for every medicine you take, make sure you ask your pharmacist. This is why. He knows from where these drugs are coming from that this is because the consumer goes after is interested in his tablet or his injection. It's not after what's an API or not what's an API. You are bringing this topic for the educated one that want to know better. But for everybody in the street, they want to go and say, I want paracetamol. I'm not fine. Can you tell me what to take? And you're getting the dry drug for him to get well or better. So, but if he gets through a pharmacist that knows about medicine, that knows about how it should be taken, that knows about this particular brand or this particular generic, I do not subscribe to it. This is the one I feel is better. Being unbiased in your judgment, looking at veracity of this drug you are taking, looking at the fact that I'm loyal to my client. I'm looking at fidelity, looking at the fact that I want to remove harm from this person, so I want the best drug for this person. Even looking at I want to give something that will be beneficial to this person, so it's the best. These are the things that a pharmacist entails, that a pharmacist should do. And so the pharmacist should be able to tell you this is what you should take. because it
All right.
knows that this is the active, and this active actually says it contain. This active is not substandard, and this active is not fake. That is the
Okay,
bottom
fair.
line in everything. There are
Fair.
policies that affect, and I think I should point that in trade policies or the likes that affect how API comes into play. You talk about the AFCTA, the African Trade Free Trade Zone, things like that, and all these are avenues that help to curb these issues. Because when you say let a product just come into this country without passing through all this scrutiny and the likes, that's why it's good to always have issues with this country, have good free trade agreement, no quarrels and all. Like China, US quarreling, it's not good for anybody because it's going to affect you at the end of the day. Or Nigeria wanted to quarrel with other countries, or Nigeria quarrel with India. If you quarrel with India, they will not give you their APIs, and there will be drug shortage. Trade agreements are very important. That's why international policies also affect too. So these are all the things you look at. But for the layman that you send in the street, always ask the pharmacist, and he'll be able to direct you better.
All right.
I
All
think that's
right.
all.
All right. Are there any other major misconceptions you'd like to clear about active pharmaceutical ingredients that perhaps, and in this case, it might not just be the average person, even amongst the professionals, that maybe they need to know?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things to the professionals is that they believe that one of the things about professionals, so they believe that at least I need to make it clear to them now, doctors or physicians. They believe that for a product to be very good, it comes from the Western countries. That is wrong. They don't know, it's a misconception. So when they see a product and they look at it, oh, it's from England, it's from USA, it is the best. No, 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 no. It doesn't. That's a misconception. What is there is that why those products are far expensive is that they do not have low cheap labor. That's why. It's not like it is far, far better. There are other from other countries in Southeast Asia, India, and some other countries that also have effective and the same. So that's a misconception. I need to point that out. To the consumer, that's to the professional now. But to the
Yeah.
consumer, one of the misconceptions is that all products are the same. I've just told you that is wrong. Say amoxil is amoxil. No, no. Some countries who are manufacturing, what determines if amoxil is about, it's not the amoxil you are looking at there, it's about the good manufacturing practice from those countries. Some countries are importing amoxil. Nigeria is importing amoxil from some other countries, and that amoxil is not the same from another country because there's no good manufacturing practice in this other country that are not well regulated. So you must ask your pharmacy, not say, "They're the same everywhere now. Go buy from this chemist. Papa Emeka they sell you like this." Their pharmacy, no. Papa Emeka might just be buying amoxil that contains nothing. While the other pharmacist is marketing or giving your dispensing amoxil that is actually I'm using amoxil as the preference point, but it's into other drugs. So to
Yeah.
a consumer, that's a misconception. Drugs is not the same. The same, no, it's not. They are generics and they're also better generics. So you ask questions. That is one. These are the two major things. There are a lot of misconceptions, but I need to point this one out. One to the professional, then one to the consumer. That is just two major. But there are others that we can always look at later because of our time. But I need to point out that's very, very, very important. You need to know about it.
All right. Okay, so you've mentioned some of the things happening in the African continent, but overall, are there any promising developments or things happening as regards API development or production, and as far as API is involved, are there any new things that we should be excited about?
Well, API is evolving, going each year, and that's why investment is actually good when it comes to research and development. That is why it's also quite difficult that in African countries APIs we are trying to get there because for you to be engaged in APIs you need to involves a lot of investment in research and development. And we talk about billions and billions of dollars. Africa is still trying to grow, trying to provide basic amenities. Is it research and development they want to put money into? What I can tell you is now APIs are actually evolving. One of the major developments is that now APIs is continuous. I think US of recent just made some of these countries, if Pfizer one of these countries now, making sure that there's a continuous production of some particular active ingredient which they know is needed. Unlike before when you produce and stop, produce and stop. Now there's a development there now. One of the recent development, continuous production. Another part is that there's what you call nanotechnology. So what it means is that you are making products that can be targeted delivery. So you don't just take the drug, you take the drug and send it to where it's supposed to work. And this actually happens mostly for cancer drugs, anti-cancer drugs rather, because anti-cancer drugs are mostly drugs that are really chemical that can really affect the system. So you take it, he's trying to do his work, but it's destroying the normal human body. So now technology has made such a way that you take it, you send it to where it's supposed to work. So it bypasses other, so it gets to other part of the body, it doesn't do anything, it just goes to where it's supposed to work. That's nanotechnology now coming in, more biotechnology, making of biologics. Biologics are using other living products to make, they call them monoclonal antibodies. And so these are all to just to improve healthcare. So they are all coming up. But like I said, if you don't put money in research and development, you won't achieve that. And that requires a country doing it. And Africa, I don't know, but I know they are still going and still growing. But these are all most recent development when it comes to APIs.
Thank you so much, Fam. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking your time to join us from so far away and for really breaking down the issue and helping untangle the aspect of active pharmaceutical ingredients. Thank you so much. All right, there. Thank you so much. That's how we round off the program for today. I do hope you've been educated about active pharmaceutical ingredients. If you're a professional in the field, I'm sure you've also learned a thing or two. Perhaps you already knew it. But then we are doing this to make everyone aware, even down to the consumer. Now you can take better care with the drugs you consume. You can always consult your pharmacist to ensure that what you are taking into your system is properly vetted. And we also have cases where different governments have put in place different ways that the average consumer can reach out and ensure that whatever they are taking is verified, it's authentic, and it's not counterfeit. Thank you so much. I do hope you join us once again on Untangle. Bye for now. I am Amadine Ubewe.